The phone rang on a Wednesday afternoon while I was staring at vendor invoices in my cubicle. I almost let it go to voicemail. Unknown local number. I thumbed the screen anyway. "Is this Noah Hale?" A gravelly voice asked, careful and professional. "It is. Who's calling?" "My name's Sal Romano. I run Romano's Pawn and Gold on Maple Avenue. I think I have something that belongs to you." He paused. "A Rolex Submariner." My brain stuttered. That was impossible. During work hours, I kept my father's watch in my desk drawer. I slid the drawer open with my knee and felt around for the leather box I had checked that same morning out of habit. The drawer felt too light. My fingers touched paper clips, a stapler, a stray pen. No box. I didn't say anything because my mouth had gone dry. "You still there, kid?" Sal asked. "The watch. It's gone." "I was afraid of that," he said. "Look, can you come down to the shop? I'd rather not talk about this over the phone. There's something you need to see." I left the office without shutting my computer down. My hands shook on the steering wheel the whole drive across town. The watch was the one thing my father left only to me. Not to be added to a list. Not to be divided. To me. He wore it to job sites and weddings, to cheap diners, and to my middle school band concerts. He wore it until chemo made his wrists thin and the band hung loose. On his last clear day, he pressed it into my palm with both hands and said, "This is yours, Noah. Only yours." That was 4 years ago. A year after that, Mom married Gerald. 6 months after that, Gerald's son Brandon moved into our house with a suitcase full of hoodies and a backpack full of ideas that lived bigger than his discipline. Romano's Pawn and Gold sits between a discount wireless store and a strip mall pizza place that smells like pepperoni and bleach. The bell over the door jingled when I walked in. The place was claustrophobic, all glass cases, guitar necks on hooks, and little white tags wired to everything. A thick-necked man with tired eyes and a gold pinky ring stepped out from behind the counter. "You gotta be Noah," he said. "I'm Sal." His face softened in a way I didn't expect. "You look like your old man. He used to come in sometimes, back when I was on Birch Road." He did. Construction guys come through. Tools. Short-term loans. Your dad was one of the solid ones. Paid on time. Didn't try to haggle me into the ground. Sal went to the back and returned with a worn leather box I knew as well as my own wallet. He set it on the counter and opened it. The watch looked smaller than I remembered, like it had been holding its breath without me. "Normally I don't question a sale when the ID matches," Sal said. "But this one bothered me, so I went into the old database. Your dad pawned this watch once, only once, 17 years ago. He paid the ticket with interest in under a month. Loan was for $2,800. Sal looked at me. "According to my notes, that was right around the time you started at Westfield Prep." I stared at the watch. I had gotten into Westfield on an academic scholarship, but there were still fees and books and uniforms. Dad told me he picked up weekend shifts pouring concrete. He never told me he pawned the one thing he never took off his wrist. "That's not the only reason I called," Sal said. He turned the watch over. "When I check authenticity, I open up what I can. This back, well, someone modified it. Not factory." He pressed the crown and a tiny cam latch snapped free. The case back lifted like a hinge I'd never noticed. Inside, tucked into a carved recess, sat a tiny piece of paper, folded thinner than a matchstick. "I didn't read it," Sal said. "Figured if he hid it, it was meant for certain eyes." My hands shook so badly I had to set the paper down on the glass and use both thumbnails to tease the fold open. My father's blocky handwriting spilled out, small, steady, without a shake. "Noah, if you are seeing this, the watch left your hand or mine. Go to Summit First Bank downtown. Box 612. Key is in the red Stanley tape measure in my toolbox, under the belt clip. The watch is yours. What's in that box is your future. Don't argue. Use it. Don't let anyone tell you different. Dad." I read the note twice, maybe 3 times. "I need to buy it back," I said. "How much?" Sal set his jaw. "Listen, the guy who brought it in told me his name was Brandon. Mid-20s. Talked a mile a minute about an app that connects food trucks and nightlife. He had a key, a story, and enough details about your house to make me think this wasn't a smash and grab. He wanted cash fast. I counted out $9,100 and set the watch aside for intake. Sal nodded at the computer behind him. But I never filed the slip. If anyone asks, the watch was never here. I can't take it like that. You can and you will, he said softer. Your father did a roofing patch for me one summer when my wife was sick. Charged me cost for materials and nothing for labor. Told me to pay when I could. I did, but he never brought it up again. This is me finishing a tab he never asked me to track. I swallowed. Thank you. You be careful, Sal said. If someone in your house did this, there's more under that rock. I drove home with the leather box on the passenger seat, my heart beating in my neck. The toolbox sat in the corner of the garage under a tarp, right where I'd left it when Mom said we should declutter, and I said no. The red Stanley tape measure was clipped to the inside lid, same as always. I slid a flathead under the metal belt clip and gently pried. A small brass key fell into my palm with a clink that sounded too loud in the quiet. I didn't go to the bank right away. I had to go inside first. Mom and Gerald sat at the kitchen island with bank statements spread out between their coffee cups like a card trick. Brandon leaned against the fridge, thumbs flying on his phone, baseball cap backward. Hoodie hood pulled tight even though it wasn't cold. I set the watch box on the island. Lose something? I asked. Mom's eyes went wide. For one heartbeat, before her face rearranged itself, I saw guilt like a shadow passing across a window. What are you doing home, honey? She asked too brightly, wondering why the only thing Dad left me was missing from my desk, wondering why it showed up at a pawn shop on Maple Avenue. Gerald gave a fatherly cough, the kind that says let's be calm. Now, Noah, I'm sure there's a reasonable explanation. I looked at Brandon. You want to tell me why you sold my father's watch for $9,100? He looked offended. It wasn't like that, bro. I was gonna buy it back. I just needed quick liquidity to bridge an investment round. Quick liquidity, I repeated. My desk drawer is not your seed fund. Mom put a hand on Brandon's sleeve. He made a mistake. He made a felony, I said. Did you know? I asked her. Mom's mouth opened, closed. This is about Gerald, she said, her voice dropping. He's been so stressed, and Brandon, he just wants to make his father proud. We're a family now, Noah. We have to help each other. Is a dream covered in debt? I said. Same as the last one. I pointed at the watch. This wasn't yours to take. I want the money back. Every dollar. Gerald spread his hands. That money's already invested. Then uninvest it. He frowned. That's not how it works. It's exactly how it works, I said. You return what you stole. Mom's face went hard in a way I had rarely seen when Dad was alive. Noah, you have a steady job and no dependents. Brandon is trying to build something. So was Dad, I said. He built me. I picked up the watch and opened the secret back. And he built this. I tucked the note back inside and snapped it shut. I'm going out. When I'm back, I expect a plan for repayment. You wouldn't call the police? Brandon said, trying to laugh. Over a watch? I looked at him so long he dropped his eyes. Try me. Summit First Bank downtown is the old stone building on Ash Street with bronze doors that always feel too heavy. The vault attendant looked at my driver's license, then at me, then at the key in my palm. Box 612, she said. Right this way, Mr. Hale. The box was deeper than I expected. Inside sat a manila envelope, a black leather notebook, and a letter in the same blocky handwriting as the note. Noah, I started this box the week you were born. Your mother never knew about it because I didn't want her to worry. Inside the envelope are bearer bonds. They should be worth around $135,000 now, maybe more, depending on rates. The notebook is the ledger for my contracting work. Contacts, invoices, a list of people who owed me money and never paid. If you want to chase it, there's likely another $52,000 in there, maybe a bit more with interest. But that's all the small stuff. I didn't want to leave you a thing. I wanted to leave you time. Enough time to choose your life without feeling pressure to please anybody. People will tell you what you owe them. They are almost never talking about money. Don't spend your hours on those kinds of bills. The watch is not a prize. It's a reminder. Time is the only honest currency there is. Spend it on purpose. Dad P.S. If Brandon or anyone else asks for a loan, tell them my answer. Show me the invoice and the work order. If they can't, it's not a job. It's a story. I smiled, and I cried, and I laughed with my face in my hands, and then I checked the envelope. The bonds were there, wrapped in wax paper like pastries in a bakery bag. The ledger smelled like sawdust from the garage and coffee from Dad's thermos. Pages and pages of neat dates and names and job notes. I ran my finger down a list and my eye snagged on a company name that made my teeth grit. Fairpoint Builders. Dad did a municipal rec center addition for them right before he got sick. They owed him $17,000. He had written a note under the line. Called twice. Processing. No check. I checked the dates. 4 years old. Still collectible depending on state rules and how stubborn people felt. I left the bank and did something I should have done for myself a long time ago. I booked a room at the Redwood Inn on the west side, paid cash, and shut my phone off. Then I turned it back on because I needed to make one call. Vasquez Law, a woman said. I need to talk to Diane, I said. This is Diane, the woman said. Her voice was crisp. I told her who I was and what I had in my hand. She told me to come by first thing. Diane Vasquez's office sits above a bakery, and the whole place smells like toasted sugar. She took one look at the ledger, the bonds, and the letter, and she smiled like a shark. Your father kept impeccable records, she said. If half the people in this state kept notes like these, I'd have to find a new career. The bonds are clean. We can liquidate as is. The outstanding invoices, these are absolutely actionable. The fact that you have dates of work, materials, and signatures helps. Give me 90 days. We won't get every dollar, but I'd bet we'll get more than you think. Do it. And the theft? She asked, closing the ledger. You filing a police report? I'll give them a chance to make it right, I said. Once. She sat back. That sounds like your father. Fair to the last second. I went back to the house with a copy of the police report in my glove box, and the original locked in the safe at Diane's office, because I know how the world works when a man like Gerald thinks he can talk you out of your own eyes. They were all there. Mom in the living room with a tear she could turn on and off like a faucet. Gerald with a hand on her shoulder like he was anchoring a ship. Brandon pacing like a caged cat, every third step kicking the baseboard like it had insulted him. We found a way to make you whole, Gerald said. Let me guess, I said. A payment plan. We can do $300 a month, he said, as if he had thought of the number while tightening a tie. Until the full $9,100 is returned. You mean it will take you just over 2.5 years to pay back what you stole in one afternoon? We didn't steal, Brandon said. You weren't using it. I held up the report number on a sticky note. I already filed. If I walk back into the station tomorrow and tell them not to move forward, they won't. But I will need a cashier's check for $9,100. Tomorrow. Be reasonable, Mom said. We are a family. Families don't raid desk drawers and pawn the dead man's watch like a used toaster, I said. You're lucky I started my morning at a pawn shop and not a police station. Mom went very still. I can ask Aunt Denise for a loan, she said, voice tiny. We could put it together. Gerald rubbed his forehead. We'll make it work, he said. We'll get you the money. He didn't look like he believed his own mouth. You have until 4 o'clock, I said. After that, I take my hands off the steering wheel. And where do you think you're going? Mom asked. Not here, I said. I'll come for my things tomorrow. I stayed at the Redwood Inn that night and slept worse than a man should when he has a good mattress and a clean conscience. In the morning, I met Diane again, signed what needed signing, and headed to Summit First to liquidate the bonds. They came out to $141,000 after the bank ran the numbers and deducted what they deducted. Not far off Dad's guess, and enough to make me breathe. At 3:52 p. Gerald texted me a photo of a cashier's check. I drove to the house at 4:20 with my phone recording in my jacket pocket because, again, I know how the world works when boys in hoodies think they can fix a problem with volume. Brandon opened the door like he owned the hinges. He tried to hand me the check with a smirk. Happy now? I took it without touching him. The word is relieved, I said. Happy comes later. I put the check on the island and slid a copy of the police report next to it. I'll email the detective, I said. It's over, but let me be clear. If any of you touch my things again, I won't be coming for a watch. I'll be coming with a warrant. He rolled his eyes. Chill, bro. I am chilly, I said. That's why I'm done standing in this house. Mom started the speech I knew by heart, the one about how Dad would want peace. I cut her off, not rude, just final. Dad wanted fairness, I said. That's what I'm delivering. The next weeks tasted like work. Diane sent demand letters with copies of Dad's ledger pages attached. She called companies and spoke in the kind of tone that makes a receptionist say, "Yes, ma'am," even if they have never said those words to anyone in their lives. I went through the ledger line by line, turning Dad's shorthand into digital files. I drove to a small town 2 hours south to knock on the office door of a retired plumber who owed Dad $2,400 and ended up paying me $2,000 in cash from a safe behind the soda machine because he said my father fixed his water heater on a Sunday and refused to take extra money for the rush. I drank a root beer in the parking lot and cried because people can surprise you both ways, and on that day I needed the good kind. Fairpoint Builders paid the full $17,000 2 days after Diane called, and used the words pattern of late payment and public record. When she hung up, she looked happy in a way I imagine wolves look happy when the snow is deep and the herd is slow. Within 8 weeks, Diane had recovered $45,700 of Dad's outstanding ledger. Some people we let go because life is hard and a man who owes $600 and tells you the truth is not your enemy. Some people we pressed because life is hard and a company that owes $9,000 and lies is exactly why. While all that happened, Brandon's app hit a wall I could have painted 6 months in advance. His partner was a kind-eyed man with a ring light in his apartment and an inspiring Instagram page, but not one working line of code. The beta was a landing page with a button that didn't link anywhere. The user acquisition strategy was a list of hashtags. The investors were friends of friends who wanted their money back once they realized the product was Air with a logo. About 2 months after the pawn shop, Mom came to my rental apartment with banana bread like I was 10 again and she needed a reason to knock. "Can we talk?" she asked. "Sure." She sat at my small table and picked at the plastic wrap around the bread. "Gerald is upset," she said, like she was testing a soft step over a creek. "He says you are trying to make him feel like a thief." "He took the watch from my desk and sold it," I said. "Words mean things. And Brandon committed a crime and then he repaid it," I said. "That is the only thing I will ever thank him for." She looked at the floor. "Your father would want us together. Dad would want us honest." She nodded like honesty was a strong drink that burned her throat going down. "Are you safe?" she asked. "Money-wise?" "I am," I said. I didn't tell her numbers. I didn't tell her about the tidy account I set up with a chunk of the bonds, or the little house I'd been closing on in a neighborhood my dad used to point to and say, "Good bones there," or the way I started sleeping better when I knew the roof over my head was paid for by the hours of a man who swung a hammer until it hurt and then swung it some more. The little house sits on a street with cracked sidewalks and big trees. I ran my hand along the plaster wall in the living room, feeling the good bones my dad used to talk about. I didn't buy a house with a payment plan. I bought a home built with purpose. The first night I slept there, I set the watch on the nightstand and fell asleep to its steady tick like a metronome, listening to the sound of time being spent on me. In the morning, I hung Dad's red tape measure above my workbench and put the brass key back under the belt clip where it belonged. I kept the ledger on a shelf where I can see it without touching it. Like a map I don't need to follow every day, but I like knowing it's mine. A month after I moved in, Sal called. "Got someone here," he said. "Says he wants to talk to you." "What for?" "Brandon," Sal said softly. "Came to sell a MacBook. Says it's his." "I'm not stupid," I asked for a receipt. It got loud. I told him I could call someone who might help him walk out without cuffs. He calmed down real fast and said to call you. I stood in my kitchen and stared at the tiny succulent Mom had given me when I got the apartment. I think she thinks a plant can make a place feel like home. Maybe she's right. Put him on, I said. There was a shuffling and then Brandon's voice, smaller than I'd ever heard it. I'm not selling stolen stuff, man, he said. It's mine. I ran out of options. Go home, I said. Get a job. A regular one. Not an idea. A job. I need rent, he said. Like today. I looked at the watch on my wrist. There's a contractor I know, I said. He needs a crew assistant. 8 hours a day, 5 days a week. It's heavy. It's honest. You get paid every Friday. You want his number? Silence. Then, yeah. I gave him the number. I called the contractor after I hung up and told him to expect a kid in a hoodie who would either become the best hand he ever trained or quit after lunch. The contractor laughed and said he'd seen both, and either was fine. No one thinks this is a Hollywood movie. Brandon didn't suddenly become a saint. He lasted 3 weeks the first time. He came back a month later. He has been steady ever since, at least steady enough that I don't lie awake worrying the next ding on my phone is a police detective. Gerald still won't look me in the eye. He moves around me like furniture. He and Mom are still married. The only thing that changed is how loudly they talk about family when the room gets quiet. Fairpoint Builders sent one last check to close out a penny difference no one but Dad or me would notice. Diane took her fee and sent me an email that said, "Your father would be happy with this outcome." I believe her. I never told Mom about the safe deposit box. If she asks, I'll tell her the truth when I want to. Not because I owe her, because I prefer honest rooms. Sometimes I still stop by Romano's Pawn and Gold on Maple. I bring Sal a coffee and he pretends not to expect it. "You done right by your dad," he says every time. "That tick on your wrist? That's a good sound." At night, when the house is dark, I pop open the watch's secret back and look at the folded note. Not because I need to read it, but because sometimes you check the lock twice even when you know you turned the key. I snap it shut, set the watch on the nightstand, and listen to it count seconds in the dark. I don't think about Brandon's app, or Gerald's speeches, or the way Mom used to say we and mean you. I think about wood straight enough to cut and level enough to stand. I think about the tape measure above my bench and the ledger on my shelf and the letter in my drawer. Time is the only honest currency there is. Dad said it. I didn't understand it when I was 15. I do now. I also understand something he didn't write down because he didn't need to. People will try to take your time the way they take your things. They will pry open your drawers and call it borrowing. They will sell your hours for their ideas and call it love. They will use your quiet like a free ride. But your time is yours. If you give it on purpose. If someone steals it, take it back. On a clear Saturday morning, I drove out to Cedar Ridge Park with a small plaque wrapped in paper. I screwed it to the back of a bench that overlooks the little lake. It reads, "In memory of Mark Hale, builder, father, teacher of time." I sat there a long time and let the sun warm my face. A kid on a bike went by with a baseball glove hanging from his handlebars. Couple shared a bag of chips and didn't talk. The world felt the right size. Later that day, I opened the ledger not to chase money but to copy something into my own notebook. The names of every person Dad worked for who paid on time, said thank you, and called him by his name. I want to remember the good lists too. A week later, a plain white envelope came in the mail with no return address. Inside was a cashier's check for $900 and a sticky note with a scrawl I didn't recognize. For the watch. Took me a while to admit it to myself. It wasn't Brandon's writing. It wasn't Gerald's. Could have been anyone who heard and decided to make something right. I took it to the credit union and put it in the account I opened called Ours. Not because the money matters there, but because I like the reminder. Mom calls sometimes now and we talk about weather and recipes and the neighbor's new roof. She still tries to walk around the truth like it's a hole in the yard she can't see even when I point right at it. That's her way. I don't try to fix her. I fixed what I could. I took back what was mine. I spent some money. I saved more. I put the rest into a life that feels like mine when I get up in the morning. People ask me if I forgave them. I don't have a clean answer. Forgiveness sounds like a ceremony. What I did feels more like carpentry. I measured my anger. I cut it square. I set it in place. I sanded the edges so I wouldn't trip on it when I walked by. I didn't build a door for anyone to walk back through. But I didn't brick up the wall either. If they knock like people who live in the light, I will open it. If they jiggle the handle like they own the house, I will not. The watch is on my wrist as I sit here and write this. I can feel it move against my skin each time I type. Keeps better time than any smart thing on a charger. Keeps better time than I did for most of my life. I'm learning. Dad left me a watch, a box, a ledger, and a letter. He left me room to be a man. He left me time. That was the gift. The rest was wrapping. And yes, I still open the back sometimes and read the small, stubborn words. Not because I forgot. Because it feels good to stand inside a promise and feel it hold. If anyone asks what I did with the money, I tell them the truth. I bought a small house with good bones, paid some old debts that weren't mine but felt like they were, and set aside enough to make sure I don't have to say yes to the wrong people. If they ask what I did with my time, I tell them I stopped handing it to folks who kept dropping it. I think Dad would call that a fair trade.